Hello, I'm Carol Talbot, the creator and founder of the Possibility Hub. In this conversation, I'm in conversation with Matthew Ryan, the developer of an energetic healing modality called Gamma Wave Healing, and we're talking about relationships and the notion of twin flames. Hello again, Matthew. I'm looking forward to today's conversation because we're talking about relationships and we're talking about the notion of twin flames. And I know that you've recently been through a relationship shift and that a lot of people are finding there's movement or changes in their relationships at this time. So maybe we'll use that as our springboard.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having me back again, Carol. Always a pleasure to see you. And yeah, this is a topic that, I think is always really close to everybody's hearts, pun intended, but really something that a lot of people are experiencing changes in energies, obviously throughout their whole life, but then one of the perfect ways in which those changes will lens themselves in their life is through their relationship. And so even if the relationship necessarily isn't ending or anything like that, there seems to be this incredible evolution of energy or an expansion of energy that is moving through everybody's lives. And so yeah, this is really it's a big topic. And when we talk about relationship, a lot of people within the so-called maybe awakening community or metaphysical community, etc., there is this notion of a type of relationship that is sacred, a type of relationship that is this perfect combination of energies coming together to create this relationship. And there are many different names out there for that. I know I personally have talked about soulmates and twin flames and things like this. And so the one that I guess we're focusing on, this twin flame connection, there's a lot of energy around that topic. And over the years, as I've seen it kind of change in the way that people think about a relationship, and specifically this twin flame relationship, I've watched with friends and clients in my own life. I've watched this energy kind of shift and change, and there are these interesting influences that I see energetically within this twin flame relationship understanding. So I guess that's a good place to jump in and speak about that first, versus what I really view as being this higher level relationship. So with the twin flame, in case people maybe haven't heard about this, the concept is that before an incarnation, that a soul would split into kind of two different incarnations, where you would have two different partners that would be able to come together and then kind of reform that soul, reform that flame. And in the coming back together, then it's understood that there's this expansion of energy and consciousness and love within the relationship. Also, maybe an expansion of our stuff that needs to come up and then get cleared. So a lot of people recognize that within this twin flame, as was defined there, that it's not just all bliss, that there actually are a lot of challenges, and that's true. Where I begin to see these issues, I feel like there are distortions that have been introduced into this concept of the twin flame that, in a way, I feel like they're probably even related to social engineering aspects that are coming in order to perhaps get people, aligned in a way with their heart energy, where there's this illusion or a distortion or maybe even fantasy that is overlaid with what they're experiencing. And what that does is it triggers then this pre-programmed response that the social engineering, I feel like, has achieved for many decades, where it's kind of like a dog whistle, right? That we're pre-programmed into this situation where we think about the relationship through this very kind of firm lens, and then when things don't go according to that lens, people then end up in these really in a discontinuity within themselves and within the relationship, which can then create problems. And so for me, when I see when people are participating in that kind of almost like a fairy tale thing of only life is only going to be better when my twin returns to me, and this kind of thinking, right? that to me is a real impediment actually with the way that the energy is attempting to express through relationship. And so, anymore, I don't even really utilize that term twin flame in my own life. And I would rather, use terms that are implying more of an intentionality, like a sacred union, or a sacred relationship, and, a very conscious relationship. And that's where my definition then begins to differ, is that I've understood this not necessarily as like, that the soul is split into two, and that these have to come back together, and hell or high water, right? It's like, I've seen people struggle through these relationships where they recognize the soul connection, they recognize the intensity of the energy, but there's this like obligation that comes with being a twin flame, where these people then sometimes exist in discordance within their relationship, because they're believing in the obligation that this is my one, and that I have to do this, we have to make this work, even though it ends up being very challenging. And so I feel like there's part of that distortion, because the conscious human being entering into relationship, there needs to be a conscious presence and conscious choosing within that relationship at every moment. So that as these energies rise, if you begin to recognize that there's actually something that is like a discontinuity that is not allowing these two beings to come together into the highest level of their potential, well, why on earth wouldn't somebody then make a shift within that relationship, right? And so,
almost as if there's certain people who've become obsessed with, I've got to find my twin flame, and nothing and no one else will do. And then thinking or considering that their twin flame, it has to be a romantic partnership, and that's not always the case. And I'd shared with you outside of these calls something that I'd come across which really resonated with me around twin flames, that I'll read again, because I think it fits in with something that you said, and I know something you'd also picked up in some of your messages that you've been getting. So around twin flames, it says, usually a soul or a soul matrix, which is a harmonic universe 2 identity, that means dimensions 4, 5, and 6, manifests into 12 simultaneous incarnations, 2 in each of the 6 time cycles in one harmonic universe. In each pair of incarnates, one is male and one is female, and it's this relationship that's often referred to as twin flames, and it doesn't necessarily imply a romantic soulmate involvement. And I feel that's important to say, because as you mentioned, I've seen friends and people obsess that they've got to meet their twin flame, and then that's who they're going to spend their life with. And yet, as you said, often these relationships can be challenging, and my belief is often our relationships offer us the largest growth of personal development, because we often see reflected in the other person aspects of ourselves that we've suppressed or denied. And as you know, in the beginning of a relationship, you look nice, you smell nice, you sound nice, you bring out all the bells and whistles. And as the relationship goes on, then those things that used to excite and interest or make us curious about the other person become the irritants. They press the buttons. And so the things that were cute and nice are no longer cute and nice. And this is, as I said, pushing buttons, as our families do, and other people in our life push buttons. But when you have those buttons pushed, that's an opportunity to look within yourself for massive growth. What happens, though, when there's movement and shift in relationships, we tend to end up in the blame game. And he did this to me, or she did that to me, which helps neither party. And it's almost as if, you start the relationship with all your baggage from previous relationships safely stored away in a suitcase, for a while, and then as you get more familiar, you open out the suitcase and take this out, take that out, and it's like, oh, holy moly. So it is an opportunity for you to say, well, do you want to take that stuff onto the next relationship and the next relationship? Because the suitcases, the baggage just get heavier and heavier and heavier until you reach that point where you're willing to let it go and allow for a deeper connection, or a different soul to come in to connect with.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of really pertinent points there, and as you had said, I mean, I had a relationship that came to a close a few months ago, and then recently came to a perfect, beautiful closure. And much of that process that you were describing of the, the growth, right? It's like the growth and the experiencing, and looking at these experiences and the connections and the love and then the things that come up, right? As you're speaking about that, unpacking our stuff after 6 months or so, that reminds me a lot. The first time I'd heard that concept, it really kind of elucidated was with Eckhart Tolle talking about the pain body. And how the pain body attraction is often what creates that intense attraction between people. And then after when he says, like, the honeymoon is over, when you get to that period of time where, like you said, things begin to relax, and we're more authentically maybe engaging and things come up. Or in the case of the pain body specifically, it's like our triggers maybe begin rising because they're being met in reflection, right? And this is something that I think is really actually integral to the sacred relationship is that any kind of a distortion that is not going to be in that harmonic resonance field that you've created with your partner, there's an opportunity for those distortions to get vibrated right up to the surface. And the hope, my hope within the sacred relationship is then being able to be present and to be able to communicate with each other in such a way so that when these things rise, that we're not unconsciously expressing them towards each other, and that we can wake up to that nature of, like, wait a second, oh my God, you're right, this thing is coming up right now that I just said to you that has no bearing on us. It's about something that happened to me when I was 13, or something like that, right?
Yes, and then having that self-awareness to see that, and also taking the time, rather than what happens is we blame the other person and then want to move straight into another relationship. Or the opposite can happen, where you've had a bad experience, and I've seen this with some of my clients. It's like they're beautiful, and yet they've not dated because they had a bad experience. And I always liken this to, if you go to, the Middle East is famous for its huge buffets, huge, amazing international buffets.
Like a cruise ship.
So if you've got this huge buffet and you take something from the buffet and you taste it and it doesn't taste nice, are you going to go back and taste it again and again and again? No, you have a choice. So I always say, so for what purpose would you think that you go and choose exactly the same again when that didn't, so to speak, taste nice? No, you'd choose something different. And I think of my own experiences in relationships and in my own marriage. I married a particularly kind man, and he was not the usual type I would have gone for. And I literally recall saying to myself, after being particularly stung by somebody, that I thought, enough, I'm done.
Yeah.
And, again, after some reflection, I always feel, although I'm no longer married, I'd never say anything dismissive about my ex-husband, because he's a beautiful person, extremely kind. And I'm not saying there wasn't some hurt on both sides, but we were able to come to the close of that relationship. He's now remarried very happily. And I'm really pleased about that, rather than, oh, he married, I didn't. I can really say I have no regrets about uh, spending time with a really, really beautiful and kind person. And so I think it's also nice to reflect on your own relationships as a reflection of yourself and how far you're coming. And that doesn't negate that you said about your relationship that it's now come to a really nice close. And it doesn't mean there wasn't a period of hurt or reflection, or I always think it's like a death where it goes through the gamut of emotions of the anger, the sadness, the fear, the hurt, the guilt. You know, you go through a gamut. It takes time.
Stages of grief. Yeah. Yeah. No, this, I think in everything that you were speaking to there, the thing that lights up for me around sacred relationship is the choice, right? Like this is one of the energies that was present for me within this relationship. And, you know, and this relationship that has ended for me a few months ago was absolutely a sacred union, you know, and wanting to acknowledge that. And the truth of that goes through every single cell in my body, you know, through every expression of this heart and this soul, knows that that was a sacred relationship. And yet that doesn't mean that it was supposed to continue forever, right? It's like what it means is that in the moment, like in the coming together, when she and I connected, it was, I kind of joke and say it was love at second sight, you know, because the second time that we had connected, like it was a long distance relationship and we'd connected via video call for the first time. And there I was like, oh my gosh, you know, there's something really here. And then we spoke the next night, and I mean, it was done for both of us after that. We fell in love very quickly and made a conscious choice to try to make this relationship happen, even though we were separated by about 1,400 miles or so. And so throughout that period of the relationship, a year and a half roughly, there was always a choice, and we were always kind of seeing this, saying that like we need to choose this every day, you know, because there are inherent challenges. If anybody's been through a long distance relationship, it's not an easy thing, you know. And as we were moving forward and making these choices in our relationship, and you know, choosing to be with each other, you know, throughout the whole time, there came into a period of time, you know, earlier this year, like in the spring, the summer, where I was getting everywhere in my life, through clients, my own life, my relationship, I was seeing that we were coming to like an energetic choice point. And that when we're at a choice point, it's that there are multiple timelines and like realities that are available to us. And in this situation where my partner and I, you know, fiance, we were actually engaged, we came to a point where we both mutually realized that some of the things that were coming up both in reflection for each of us, as well as the logistics, that we needed to make a different choice, right? And in spite of the love, you know, the highest choice that was available to us in that moment was that we both had to go onto these kind of separate timelines. And where, you know, you had mentioned in the coming back together then again recently, you know, a relationship ending is never an easy thing, you know, even if it's like easy and there's like a clean break, and you know, that's not an easy thing, because the heart's involved. And especially in a situation like this, where the two partners are consciously choosing to be together in relationship, and then to make a choice to separate those lives again, you know, there's a lot of energy that's involved with that, obviously, and a lot of grief. I mean, the learning that I had gone through, and the grief and the grieving of the ending of that relationship, and the retrieving of my energy from those other timelines, the futures that were laid out in front of us very consciously, of you know, everything from choosing towels when I bought bath towels to like silverware, and you know, it's like merging those lives. All of that becomes untangled, and then comes back onto its own timeline. And we were able in recent time to be able to kind of circle back in a few months later, and there was this window of opportunity that opened for us to be able to drop into a deeper depth of communication and healing and resolution, because you know, time, you know, heals wounds, right? And so we both had reached this place where there was able to be a very clear conscious communication and sharing, and you know, and opening and blessing into our future lives apart from each other. And that, to me, I mean, I don't know, what I'm aiming for and what I feel like my spirit is being called for is that type of relating, you know, where there is such honoring. And even though there may have been hard emotions at different points, those aren't the things that we want to carry. Like you said, I don't want to pack that up in my backpack and carry some resentment or some pain forward. And so it takes courage, to look at these things square in the face and to move through them with an open heart. And I'm so grateful that that level of closure has come available. And then now it's like, as my field expands, right? It's like my field expands into this unlimited possibility of the next connection, the next most resonant connection. And that's where I view the sacred union and the twin flame, is that it's not about like this obligatory pieces fitting back together. It's about resonance fields. And the other soul, or maybe even if it is a fractal, holographic incarnation that we touched upon a little bit earlier, which I'm now exploring, higher dimensional beings maybe fractaling their consciousness into multiple incarnations. And then when these incarnations are able to come back into communication with each other, this whole thing becomes available, and another depth of learning is made available within that resonance field. 2 months, maybe 10 years, maybe until I'm no longer in this incarnation, maybe beyond this incarnation. There are all these possibilities, and I feel like this shift that we're all moving through collectively is really playing a major role in the way that we're reformatting and recalibrating and coming together and living this life in a way that our heart can find its fullest expression.
And those last words, your heart finding its fullest expression, isn't that what it's all about? To really feel deeply and fully and care about another person. And I often think there's a wonderful book, I think it was by Gary Renard, who was involved in the Course of Miracles stuff. And his book is called The Disappearance of the Universe. And he said, there's nobody out there. Everything is your own manifestation, which means that in a relationship, when you think it's you love the other person, there being a reflection for you to engender self-love and remind ourselves that what love really is. And I say this because so many schools of thought and philosophy teach and talk about self-love. And as we know, no amount of looking in the mirror saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, means that you do. And that seems to be one of the most challenging things, this self-love. So what we do is we project that love onto someone else. And then when we say, if they disappear or do something we don't like, they've taken our love away. When really their presence has engendered our ability to generate love and understand our own ability for self-love. So these reflections, when relationships shift or there's movement, and I hear people say, well, I'm never falling in love again. And then that's taking it all away. That's taking away your own self-love, and then becoming so small when, love is such a beautiful expression, whether it's in a soul connection, whether you want to call it twin flame, a special relationship, or with your friends, with your family, with your pet, or to love life.
Yes. Yeah, I think that really is the core, and that it's such the self-love component is so important, because if you're not fully vested in that relationship with yourself, really the only thing maybe that can happen is that there ends up being projection, and there ends up being this externalization, right? And that's setting ourselves up to learn lessons, when we're operating like that with this constant externalization. And that self-love component, actually, like in my experience and with this recent relationship, is that was at the core of why we ended up needing to both separate the relationship, because for where she was at in her life and where I was at in my life, we both saw that due to, like, we had to choose our own self, and that choice of that own self-love then ended up diverting onto these two parallel paths, and then both of our lives have expanded in different ways since then. But that choice, I mean, it seems kind of counterintuitive, where people may say, yeah, but Matthew, you were in your sacred union. Why would you choose to step away from that? And ultimately, it wasn't that I was stepping away from sacred union. I was actually deepening my sacred union. I mean, it's even saying that, like, it brings emotion. It's like, this is one of the core pieces that I feel like we're all here to learn. And how we learn from each other in relationship is that there's no need to look outside of ourselves for this thing that we so desperately want to connect with.
Yes, so it's a relationship is an opportunity to enhance, to share, to do things together and experience the beauty of being in relationship, which brings me round to, as you said, a lot of people's relationship is in a sort of movement phase because, there's been, challenges in the world. And it's led people to reflect what's really important to me.
Yeah.
And people often enter relationships without asking what's important to you about this relationship, without talking about expectations. Even in friendship, some people expect a good friend to be calling every single day, whereas others, it's kind of like, oh no, once a week is enough. We have different expectations, and so this is where communication and being honest about, this is how I'm feeling. With one group, I remember recently, one of them was having a little trouble. They were a group of 3 individuals, not in friendship. So there's nothing weird going on there. Yet, what I did was the talking stick. Having the talking stick round, and the person holding the stick was allowed to say, this is how I'm feeling right now. And the other 2 could listen and say, thank you. And then the talking stick went round and, well, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is what I heard you say, and this is how it made me feel. Now, it went round quite a number of times until they were totally complete. But very often, these are what we call the crucial conversations, but also the conversations that go under the rug. We don't speak. And I know I've been guilty of that before, being annoyed and not speaking my truth. And of course, the other person wondering, well, what's going wrong? And I never said.
Yeah, this is a really important thing as well. And, I can look back in relating to that, about that core communication, right? And feeling the voice, feeling that safety of being able to speak, to be vulnerable and to share your truth. And I can look back on my journey of my adult relationships, that maybe going back and starting with my ex-wife when we met 18, 19 years ago, and the growth that we had. And I can look back in those early moments, and this was the first time that I had lived with a partner. Before I had always dated and had separate places. And so when I moved in with my now ex-wife, we, there were things that would come up that were triggering, energies within me, and within relationship and within my own self-love, I had negated a lot of my voice, and I wouldn't share things, and they would be boiling up within me. And so I would go outside and I would split firewood, and work it out of the body. And then maybe 2 days later, I would come to my, girlfriend, eventually wife, and I'd say, this is coming up for me, and I'm really feeling something. And she would be like, that was some days ago. You're still going through that, And so I was learning my way of how to reach those places of communication where I could share, what I was feeling, and I could feel safe, and that it wouldn't be rejected, or I wasn't afraid that it would be rejected. And then I watched that evolution grow after my wife and we split up, and then the relationships that I've had over these last 6 years, that it's really interesting, because what had shifted within me through that marriage was coming into that place of center of clear communication, feeling safe and vulnerable. And you know, when in my most recent relationship, that's one of the things that I so love and honor about that relationship, is that by being in long distance, you know, you're communicating virtually, right? So it's like, thank goodness we have video calls like Zoom or other things, so that we can see each other. But there, as things would come up, each of us were able to step into a place of vulnerability and trust and say, hey, listen, this is coming up for me right now. And we were able to hear each other, and we worked through so much. Whereas I look at other relationships, you know, prior to this, my most recent partner, and there were definitely, when things would come up, you know, on the other side of the relationship, they were getting suppressed. There wasn't engagement, and that, you know, that's not tenable for a conscious, sacred union. You know, we need to be into that place, and to trust that with your partner, that even if you go into a place that's vulnerable, and your heart is quivering a little bit because you're afraid you're going to get hurt, you're afraid that it'll be rejected, that they won't be able to hear you, maybe. At least that was like on my side, because those are my issues that I've dealt with. But you know, going into that place and speaking, and then the other person to be able to hold a container and receive it with, you know, while not triggering their own thing and jumping in on each other, which is kind of the normal way of relating. And so that's a growth and a learning that I'm so grateful for. And I know it's an integral part of going forward for me, and going forward in relationship, that there needs to be able to be that kind of space of that trust and that allowing, and to step into vulnerability with courage, and to face those fears, and then to have that met on the other side by a partner that will hold that space sacred, so that you can release those fears, we can release the wounds, and be very present.
What I love is the word vulnerability, because without open communication, without trust, you cannot be vulnerable. And again, if I think back to myself, that was a tough one to learn. To learn that people do not think less of you when you're vulnerable. In fact, it opens up another level of beauty and sacredness. So it's, as you said, whether it's twin flame soul connection, really what we're looking for and what we seek is that sacred union that comes when you can communicate clearly, trust the other person and trust yourself, and be vulnerable to allow it all out and to come out.
Yeah, and to be clear, you know, and I had a friend communicate even with me yesterday, and talking about a connection of theirs, that you know, just be clear, you know, as energies are, I mean, the world is changing so rapidly right now, that even in this discussion, you know, we may look back on this discussion 3 months from now and feel like even the information's obsolete. Yes. Because it's changing so rapidly. And so, you know, understanding that and knowing that we ourselves are going through major changes, and if your heart begins to speak to you in a different way, and there's a recalibration needed within relationship, it's like, okay, trust that and speak it and be clear and direct, because that's the part of the sacred union, is this honoring, and that these are individuals that are coming together consciously to form something much, much bigger, right? The energy of that connection, when you come together in a resonance field with a partnership like this, or you know, whether it lasts for a matter of days or years, it doesn't matter, that the energy, the amplification of energy that is available, and being amplified by the energies that are coming into our world right now, there's rapid change and growth and expansion. And so, yeah, all of those things that you mentioned they're all so integral, you know, and especially that clarity, you know, the clarity of the truth of where we're at, and how we want to continue engaging. And it's such a beautiful moment, and my heart is blown wide open, really a lot of the time anymore, and I'm grateful for it.
Oh, thank you for being ready to share what you've been through, because I know there's been times when it's been very raw, and willing to go there. Yeah. So thank you for sharing. Is there one last piece of advice or message you'd like to share with people around relationships and sacred union?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of intentionality is very important right now in whether you're in relationship or maybe you're holding space for a relationship, like, like I am, and it's like holding space within myself for, the right alignment for me that to be reflected then in this connection, and living this moment right now with intentionality, living this moment with integrity within our own energetic field, and clarity, intending clarity within our own energetic field, but being open to this incredible possibilities that are in front of us. And like, I'll just to even share about that, like looking through our lenses, there was some years ago where I was in Sweden and I was teaching a workshop with some of my clients in Sweden. And in this workshop, I was leading a guided meditation, and this guided meditation was working with Metatron. So we would go into the Metatron field, and I introduced them to these higher dimensional guides, and then while they're over there doing their thing, silent in the meditation, my experience, I checked in with my guide, and the guide said, you can find your partner that you're holding space for. You can find your partner within this field, and you can go down in then and connect in with the essence of your partner within this unified field of human frequency within the Metatron field. And so I did, and when I connected in with the field of this partner, I saw kind of a personified image that I had seen many times through dreams and things like that about what my partner may look like. And then right in front of my eyes, she shifted, and she became an Ethiopian woman. And I kind of took me aback for a moment, and I was like, I'm gonna be with an Ethiopian woman? Like, that's like, how is that gonna happen, but I looked into her eyes, and I saw in her eyes that kind of soul resonance reflection, and I realized, oh, okay, like even that, my concept even of like what would be resonant, what would be, I need to let all of that go, and drop it all. And then that puts me more into this place of receptivity, where you're open and available to any of the miracles that the universe would be able to bring through my life, even if it comes in the reflection of a lens that I'm not quite expecting. So it's really it's an amazing moment right now, and I'm so in love with love in a way, and so excited as I see these energies really expressing in people, being drawn into these really wonderful relationships that offer so much healing and so much love. So yeah, I wish all of the highest form of relationship upon all of us, and as we all move through this moment collectively.
Yes, hear to that. Let's all hold the highest and richness in relationship. Absolutely. Thank you for a wonderful conversation, Matthew, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
I will. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.